Hello, good morning, and welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, Anne, and Disembodied Hands, Quindy, and Justin, and John. Shadow Raven, we had to wait for your permission to sploosh. Not really, it was just actually fortuitous timing. So, good timing. Today is your good timing day. Go do stand-up today. Last day of work, huh? Till tomorrow. Daffodil, you're funny. You're good. Oh, dear me. Oh, I wish I had the last day of work till the new year. Not yet, though. Still have to work my butt off through Tuesday, I think. David's parents come Tuesday. So, and on Monday I get my COVID booster. So we'll see how I feel on Tuesday. Hopefully, so I'm planning to make Monday, like, I'm thinking Monday has to be, like, my last productive day before the holidays. Because I don't know, David's COVID booster hit him really hard, and I'm not sure how mine is going to hit me, so. We shall see. We shall see. I will alert you again, Quindy, so Tuesday may be kind of weird. I've already been out in the cold and snow to feed the livestock. Yeah, timing is irrelevant from here on. Hey, Val. Thank you for the Kiri faces. Hello, Bob and Julie. Oh, so I really like our red sash. I think I really like how it is working with our Gnoll. There we go. Gnoll. So let's do some metallics. Let's metallic our little hearts out today. And I'll probably make the pouch just brown. He doesn't, except for the basing here, he doesn't have like a lot of like grounding colors on him. And so I feel like I really want to make that brown. So yeah, let's actually just use russet brown to base coat our brass. And yeah, cool, Quindy. Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that my immune system is pretty good. I haven't been sick in years, like literally years. So I'm kind of hoping that it'll be good, but you never know. So I just want to prepare you for the possible outage of an Ann on Tuesday. Possible Ann outage looms. News at 10. David makes fun of me because apparently on the West Coast, news at 11. Everybody watches news at 11, but in the Midwest, it's news at 10 because apparently we go to bed atrociously early in the Midwest. I'm not sure. But he's like, you're getting it wrong. So, just an amusing thing. Amusing regional disparity for you. Yeah. I got the Pfizer shots, and I don't know if I'm going to get a Moderna booster. David did, and he was out for a day. Like, he was done. Like, he slept the whole day. I just can't do that. Like, I can't remember. There was a time, there has been maybe 2 times in the past where I have been that sick. Like, way when I was younger, but it's a distant memory, and I don't wish to relive it. So we're using russet brown. When you do a base coat underneath a metallic, you do want to go with a darker color. It just helps to make the metallic flakes shine brighter. Yeah, he was nauseous, Crows, so I'm not looking forward to another round either, but you know what? Better than getting really sick, so. David's very good about shots. He always takes his flu shot too, and I've never had a flu shot, so. All right, so we're going to make the bell part of this that goes over his arm stump brass, and we're going to make the hook steel. And we'll do the same over here. We'll go brass with the handle and then steel with the blade. And he does have some earrings, so we'll probably go brass with those. He has buckles, and we'll go silver with those, or steel. So we are going to base coat under all of our metallics, then we're going to set them up and do some basic shading and highlighting on them. We'll see how much of that we get through today, or if a lot of it ends up going toward next week. I do have a little bit of mold flashing in the inside of that hook that I'm seeing from this angle, so I do need to go grab my knife and take care of that. Ah. You're much more vigilant than I am then, Carly. I don't know. I never, especially after I went on keto, I never got sick. And so and I was always like, in my 40s. So I was like, well, maybe when I get a little older. But I guess, you could put that off forever. Cat will pout. If you're not on her, cat will be thrilled that she can curl up. That's funny, Quindy. But yeah. So yeah, just as an awareness that I may be out, in compromised, etc. on Tuesday, but maybe not. If I'm really, really tired, then I will cancel the stream just because I won't have the energy to really be peppy, excited, enthusiastic Anne. Nobody likes to watch unpeppy, unexcited, unenthusiastic Anne, so wouldn't want to make Quindy sit through a whole stream of that. I need to highlight that paw. Or maybe, I guess I did highlight it. It's kind of covered underneath that base there. So I'm going to get the pouch here just so I can come back and get it later. I'll add some more shading, make it a darker brown. But that way everything will be base coated on the model. Finally. And whenever I've got a pouch and I'm not sure what color I want to make it, I just go with my dark leather recipe because it's not going to disrupt anything and it's going to go with everything. Russet brown shaded with either brown liner or blackened brown and highlighted with, usually I mix in driftwood brown, or if it's a really saturated color scheme, I might go with orange brown instead. But it will not clash with anything. Like, this color goes with every color on the planet. I don't care what it is. It will not clash with it. There may be a brown that goes better with a given color than this, but it won't clash with anything you do. And that's why when I get down to the end of things, especially, I'm more likely to reach for russet brown for any little bits left over, like belts and pouches, if I don't have a defined plan for them, because I know that this dark brown won't clash with anything. It will go with everything. And it won't distract anything, because it's a dark color. Dark neutrals, they are your friends. Use them. You could also go with black. Although I do find, I don't know, I just find that putting a dark brown on things just makes everything harmonize a little bit better. Alrighty, so browns, I gotta get I gotta get the little earrings. Remind me about the earrings. Once I paint them brown, it's so easy to forget to paint them. And originally I thought about making them silver, and I may go back to that if I can't get these to show up well enough in gold, but let's face it, he'd probably have garish brass earrings, gold or brass earrings. Because, more bling. He wants bling. He's a Gnoll. So we'll try to not forget the lovely earrings. Because we want to give our Gnoll bling. It makes our Gnoll happy. There we are. All right. So that's nice and dark. We got all that in. We need to do the gray. Yeah, I mean, you could go with silver in the ears, but gold is just more piratey. But you can always, just say, screw people's expectations. I'm going to go with the other metal because it shows up better. You can totally do that. You can totally tell the world, F you world, screw you world. I want to make my Gnoll silver. He likes silver. In other words, don't let people's expectations or tropes like dictate what you do. You should do what you want to do. It's your model. Nobody cares but you. I think I want to darken this down a little bit. I actually dug out my corporeal shadow. Yeah, world, exactly. Most of the time, I thank the universe for existing. But sometimes you want to look at the world and just go. So I'm going to use corporeal shadow. It's a limited color. You can use any dark gray, really, or dark. Yeah, I could use blue liner here. Although corporeal shadow is a little less. It's a nice dark neutral. It's a cold neutral. It's kind of a gray. It's a dark grayish with a blue hint to it. Like I said, it is a limited color. It's a mixture of blue and brown pigments, actually, with a bit of black in it. So you could mix it up yourself or something like it, and you'd be just fine. I just grabbed it when I was sorting through my paint the other day. I realized I had it. I always liked it, so I thought I would just get it out. And you can see all the blue in it. You can see that it definitely turned this a little bit bluish. So it's a blue-gray. It's a neutral blue-gray, which is great. I just wanted my... I use cloudy gray, but I do like to go a little darker with my base if I want the steel to be brighter. So... yes, we can shake our fists collectively at the world. I think that is perfectly okay to go into the new year shaking your fist collectively at 2020 and 2021. However, 2022, it's a low bar, 2022. Like, it's really a low bar. Can't you just give us a good year? Nice year? Fantastic year? Let's have a fantastic 2022. It's got so many twos in it. How can it be bad? It's not like those uneven years. All right, so I'm going to pop this on. It is still looking a bit light. We'll find out. We'll see how the silver looks over the top. Or the steel. Make our call that way. Oh, I forgot to totally take off that mold line. I need to do that. Now, let's have positive mindset, please. Anne believes in positive mindsets. I'm going to do this first and I'll come back. I really do believe in a positive mindset, actually. Like, it's a fundamental thing. I have my days where I'm really not enthused. But I find that living those days just makes life harder. And if I can find my positive mindset, living life becomes easier. So I seek the positive. I always believe the day will get better, that tomorrow will be better, that next year will be better. And I work to make that happen. So, positive mindset for the win, folks. You do have to work to make it happen. You just can't expect it to happen. Yep, Shadow Raven. Well, you live your life your way and I will live life my way. I spent a very long time when I was younger falling on my face. Now I seek to not quite fall on it quite so much. But yes, do you. It's the message, the final message is always do you. Be yourself. Best I can do is encourage and offer education, elucidation. So yeah, just a bit of roughness there. I'm just going to keep scalloping my knife, the tip of my knife around. That's why I like these fine tip knives. I like the scalpel blade. I can fit it into places, and I like the angle of it. This is where the Bones Black is slightly inferior to Bones USA. Bones USA would cut more like styrene. It'd be a lot easier to shave this stuff out. It wouldn't be quite as plasticky. But the PVC is very plasticky, even with the durometer setting up. So you're going to get just a little bit of grit here and there. And you have to work a little harder at getting it out of that. And you have to ask yourself, you know, how much it really matters, like how much longer you're going to spend on it. And if it's a gaming piece, you probably don't care that much. There we go. Yeah, Max, that's kind of where I am. I'd go so far as to say that I'm less like hoping, I'm more like expect the best and prepare for the worst. Because I am an incurable optimist. It is kind of my stock in trade. I have my down days, but usually I bounce back. I think everybody's got their down days. Because you know what? There's a lot of good in the world, and there's a lot to be thankful for. So, I'm very aware that our human brains tend to like focus on the negatives, like, oh my gosh, I sucked on this miniature. I'm never going to be good. I should just give up now and just like lower my expectations, right? But I feel like there's also a lot of positives, and that our brains tend to ignore those positives. They tend to focus all on the bad stuff. So that's why I focus on the good stuff with you guys. I feel like I need to be a small force for overriding the negatives in our brains. Our sad sack brains. Yeah, see, that's me too, Quindy. That's me too. Like, I've definitely noticed, like, an improvement in my state of being. And really, existing is about your current state of being. So if I can improve my state of being, I'm going to go for it. So there we go. We have cleaned up our hook. We have successfully base coated our stuff. Putting an extra coat here on the sword just because I feel like I didn't get quite a solid coat on the first time. Although this color covers very well. I mean, the inestimable Jason Weeby said it best, Shadow Raven. Whether you believe you can or you believe you can't, you're right. And so I choose to believe that I can. Or at least I work on believing it. It gets hard. Like right now, submitting this book, it's hard. Lots of rejection. Very nice rejections for the most part. Still rejection. But it's good training. There we go. Got a little bit. Hello, Alana. We're just setting up some base coating on what we're going to do metallic in a moment. I am kind of touching up. I found some areas that I had not quite cleaned the mold lines off of, so I was knifing them and reapplying my base coat. There we go. Now I think we're ready to go, though. We've got places to put our brass. Yeah, well, that's what retirement planning is about, right, Max? And emergency funds. God, I love emergency funds. All right, there we go. So nice and solid. We are set. We can go ahead with, let's do our brass first. So Alana, this is a Reaper Miniatures stream. So I'm Anne, and I do every morning here on Reaper Miniatures Twitch. And we paint all sorts of Reaper models. We have a rotation of 6 that we go through. And the Gnoll, we're actually almost done with now at this point. I just have to do the metallics here and on the silver or steel. So let's see here. Where's my metallics? Hiding on the floor because normally I do non-metallic metal. That's where they are. Thank you. Yeah, I'm really happy with the Gnoll. This is a Julie Guthrie sculpt. So he's Hackle Black Hook Gnoll Pirate, and he's in the Bones Black line. So he's a plastic model. but a bit higher detailed than the base bones Reaper Bones line. I'm going true metallic metal. I mean, it said we were going to go TMM. I don't ever slap on metallics and a wash and be done. Shadow Raven. I don't believe in it. Like, if I'm going to do metallics, I'm going to do metallics to a decent standard because I can, and it's not that much work. So, it's probably easier than doing NMM on this model. But I don't like, okay, so what do you mean keeping it simpler? Because like, when you say that, I go, what else is there? There's NMM or there's TMM. And I don't see, like, that there's anything outside of that. Unless you mean, like, really, really simple, like base coat wash simple. Can you explain? Please elucidate. Am I missing something? Is there a new fad I don't know about? Because, you know, I'm all about finding out about those fads and then totally undermining them. Yeah, tarnished brass. And new golds. And pearl white. And what do we want for our steel today? Oh, I've got clockwork brass. No, I want a warmer brass. Let's see here. Where's my steel? What have I got for steel? That could be good. I don't keep a lot of silver metallics in my... Yeah, I think I'm going to do that. I think I kind of want to go that way. Aged pewter, true silver, and pearl white. 3 steps. So Alana, Reaper has a YouTube channel that we put up all these videos on after I do them, and there's almost 300 of them now. So if you want to see this guy, like, from the first, so if you want to find out how I did the fur and the stripy pants and everything, which we still actually have to do a little bit of work on. But there's, there we go. Quindy gave us the link in chat. But you can go and look up his number, 338, 30038. So 30,038 technically. And you can look at all of the videos. So if you want to see how we did the sash or you want to see how we did the fur, we did the fur first. So earlier on in the videos, the fur will be it, but they're all there. So you can look at them if you want to see how he got to this point. But yeah, we do a lot of different things. Yeah, it's real simple texture. You can do real simple texture at 28. I just did a video on this on my Patreon. We're doing 28mm textures for our $2 tier. And I just did fabric this month earlier, so. I did forget to paint gray over the buckles on his leather, so I'm going to do that real quick before I mix up metallics. Because I definitely want to put these in steel. So I chose aged pewter for this instead of a more traditional steel metallic. And I chose it because it's darker and browner. So if I want to do some rust effects on his blade, which I might, then I feel like pewter is going to give me that dirtier effect. The copper NMM triad? No, but you have an excellent suggestion. And guess what? That's going to go right on my list, Mobrock. I'm always looking for ideas. Usually when a patron joins, I ask right away. The first thing I do is ask them if there's anything they'd like to see content on. Copper NMM triad. How to use. Yeah, because it's not as easy as you might think. So when I create stuff for Reaper, when I used to create stuff for Reaper, I would try to give the most useful colors, but sometimes when I did a triad, like with Copper and MM, it was hard because the shadow for Copper and MM really should have been russet brown, but I already had russet brown, and I didn't want to make another dark brown that was very like russet brown. So instead I did the verdigris color because we didn't have a good verdigris color in the line yet. And I figured that that was more important. So we have the tarnished copper, the new copper, and the verdigris. And the shadow you should use is russet brown, 91.99. So do put that brown in. But yeah, I can do a little write-up on that. That would be fun to do, maybe for January, Mobrock. Although I still want to do a couple of more texture things for the $2 tier, so we'll see. But I've got it written down now, and so now we'll go on my list of future topics. Thank you. Brindwind box. Okay, thanks, Quindy. Quindy always finds things. She's very good at searching. I totally imagine you like a World of Warcraft gnome, Quindy. I'm sorry. Do you have light green or pink hair? Like, I can totally dispel that image out of my head. Yes, Mo. Yes, you do. My Patreon is super fun. It has so much stuff on it now because we've been doing it for almost 3 years. Like, this is pretty much the new year is my 3-year anniversary. My Patreon is my favorite thing I've ever done. I love it. It keeps on giving. Thank you for the link there. Yes, and I also have a lot of free stuff, as you all know, like, because I don't believe that everything should be behind a paywall. So we do these video streams with Reaper, and then I also I'm starting up a little tiny YouTube series, although it's only got one video up public right now, but the second video just went up for my patrons. Patrons get early access to it. But yeah, it's pretty much I want to have something out there for mini painting fundamentals that's very short, very easy to watch. So I started doing that too. So there are other places that you can find my content for free, but the Patreon serves to keep me going. Like, literally, it funds my life. It is my my career. So thank you to everybody who supports me on there, because you make a huge difference. I wouldn't be able to do all these things and produce all this content and teach all these miniature tricks without you guys. All right, so my brown liner is always going missing these days. Oh, there it is. All right, we'll grab our brown liner. Sometimes I'll use walnut to line when it's 28 millimeter because it's so small. Yes, there's my YouTube. You can go watch the first one. Yeah, that's kind of why I started this fundamental series on my YouTube, Coops, is that I figure it's easy to get overwhelmed with a lot of choices. And so if I put up these little, 7 or 8 minute videos on YouTube, then if you want kind of a brain reset on mini painting, you can go over there and watch those, and it's going to be the very basics, but it'll kind of give you a clean reset. You're like, oh, base coating. Oh, I never thought about that. I never thought about what brush I used. I never thought about this or that. I never knew I was supposed to have that much paint on my brush. And it can kind of give you kind of a clean reset to just start again from your fundamentals and make sure you're not missing any steps. And then it'll give you essentially the set of tools you need to tackle almost anything, any subject on my Patreon. You can also just search my Patreon. I'm really good at using keywords. So like if you search my Patreon for washes, you're going to come up with a couple of videos that deal with washes, at least in part. Stuff like that. I try to do that with things and colors. Like if you look up painting red, there are several videos that I talk at least in part about painting red on. So stuff like that. You should be able to search. Yes, Anne's reset button. Oh no, only 241 videos. What will you do, Robin? That means we probably hit our 250 already. Ah, aren't published just yet. Yeah. That makes sense. All right, I am going to add... Brown liner is good for shading, but sometimes on really tiny models, I want a more solid line. And so I'll drop a little walnut into my brown liner because I still want the fluidity and the increased flow improver, but I want my line just to be a little heavier on a 28 millimeter to bring out the details. Alrighty. But yeah, ideally my new YouTube series kind of works with the Patreon because it should give you, when I've got a few more videos up, it should really give you what you need to tackle any of my Patreon topics then, to get more out of my Patreon. Because sometimes when I'm covering a topic, I can't always stop and tackle the fundamentals with you. Because I have to, talk about the topic at hand. And so this lets me refer people, or will let me refer people to, and if you need help with glazing, you can find it on my YouTube. So, building my instructor ecosystem. It's taken a while to figure out how I wanted to structure all this. You tend to jump in on this stuff and just kind of try to swim and see. And it takes a while to figure out, like, the best way to swim for you. It's also scary to just jump in, but if you never jump in, then you never get to figure it out. Like, sometimes you just need the direct experience to figure these things out in life. To figure out whether something is for or against you. Well, you can always upgrade, Mo. Essentially, $10 is going to give you a lot more video content and some higher level stuff. So if you want the advanced stuff, for sure. I try to keep, I don't always do it, but I tend to keep my $2 tier more intermediate level, basic to intermediate level, and I try to keep my really advanced videos I tend to put in the $10 tier. There aren't too many of them, because I know a lot of people on my Patreon are either new or they're a solid intermediate. So I like to give some of the crazy high-end magic, but at the same time I know that most people aren't necessarily looking for that yet. But if you like the $5 tier and the $2 and $5 content, then you can decide whether you want to go higher. You can always upgrade. But, any support is appreciated. So whatever you decide to do. I'm just happy that you're thinking of joining my Patreon. And don't forget to join the Discord if you do Discord, because we have a good gang. They make me happy. You guys make me happy on my Discord. I'll be on today to catch up. And to see if anybody's dropped any more enabling Kickstarters in the enablement channel. Things that I should not pledge to. Yeah, I hear you, Grey Mouser. I go through periods like that. And then there follows a period where I just absorb all content. I've found with my own stuff that's kind of, with my life, that's kind of what I do, is I'll be really busy, but then I'll need something. And so I'll go to, like, one of the Patreons I follow on my personal Patreon, or I'll go to, a YouTuber that I used to really watch and haven't for a while, and I'll just, like, devour a block of content all at once. I never mind supporting people if I'm not actively using it. If it's just a few bucks, like, just because I know as a Patreon user that few bucks from as many people as they can get is what keeps them going. So there are people I just like to support that I don't even use the content so much, but I want them out in the world creating the stuff that they create. So your own personal, like how you use Patreon is all up to you. Alrighty, so we've cleaned up with lining. We've made these buckles stand out nicely again. So now I feel like when I go in with the metallic, I'll have those details in place to be able to work with it. Ah, okay. The missing ones are scheduled but not published yet. And have you scheduled like all of them? Like, is this number 247 that we're filming here, or is this like 248 and you haven't? Are we on 250 and I don't even know it, Quindy? I'd like to celebrate my little, anniversaries. Like every 100 episodes would be cool. All right, cool. Let's get our metallics on. Let's mix up our brass color. So, as I mentioned with the bronze column, you want to start as light and bright as you can get with your metals if you're going to do a lot of shading. And this is the same reason, the reason for this is the same as I bring up on my new washes video on the Patreon that I published yesterday. That'll go up on YouTube free in a couple weeks, which is that the lighter the color that you put the wash over, the more dramatic the difference. The more you bring out details, the more, the more it affects the underlying surface. And if you're doing a lot of weathering, you want it to show up. And so if you start much lighter, you have room to bring it down over several levels and then to bring it back up and get a very high impact difference from that. So we're going to start with tarnished brass, which is actually one of my favorite like kind of muted gold colors. It should still be pretty bright. If it's not bright enough, I may add a drop of new gold to it to punch it up. I'm going to put it, I think I am going to do that just in advance. I know how I like to kind of weather stuff. So I'm going to add one drop. Tarnished brass and new gold share the same flake color. 2 months behind, oh my gosh. It is a tangled web. I know. No, I get it. YouTube. There's much fist. If you want to shake your fist at something, shaking it at YouTube, totally valid. Cannot tell you. I have such a simple YouTube right now, and I cannot tell you how, like, just generally annoyed at it I am. Annoyed at its functionality or lack thereof. Annoyed at its organizational qualities or lack thereof. So I feel it. I'm like all the feels, Quindy. All the feels. Boop. All right, so I'm going to drop just one drop of water into this. It's just going to make it a 5-to-1 mix on my metallic. And that may be even a little thin, so we're going to see if I have to add another drop. You don't want to go any thinner than 5-to-1 for sure with your starting metallic coat. You'll usually see, once you mix it, watch it for a second and see if it drops out of solution. If you start seeing major separation, like you can kind of see it darkening, this isn't too bad. This is holding up pretty well, but I think one more drop of color would actually be an advantage. And so I am going to put one more drop of new gold in there, which is going to bring us to a 2-to-1 tarnished brass new gold ratio. Okay, I'm going to put a drop of new gold in there if my bottle doesn't want to clog. Thank you, new gold. Metallics like to clog. It is the most boogery base ever. It's a wonderful base. It's the clearest and shiniest base, which is why our metallics are made in it. There's just a little extra. But it also, like latex, is at the drop of a hat. So it likes to make little particles and boogers. It likes to skin over. It likes to clog the aperture of the bottle. So just keep your pokey tool handy when dealing with metallics. Okay. Yeah, that would be great. Cool. Well, 1022. Gosh, so we're well after 250. We're on our way to 300. All right, so now this is bringing this up a bit more. It's warming it up also because the pigment in New Gold is like yellow ochres and stuff. So there are 3 components, well, 4 if you count the additives, but there are 3 main components to a good metallic. And you essentially have the base, which should be as clear as possible, and that's why many metallics don't cover very well. Because the more opaque you make the base, the less shiny your metallic gets, and a lot of people want shinier. So usually you go for a clear, hard base with metallics. And then you've got the flake, which gives you your basic color. It sets up the color, and you have then pigments, your third additive, to change that color to affect it. So I will tell you that New Gold is very, very close to the actual flake color. Like, I tried to keep it very much in line. And the pigments that I used thus are yellows, different types of yellows. But the more pigment you put into a metallic when you formulate it, the duller it will get. So it will essentially start becoming much less shiny as you add pigment. And with a darker metallic, I don't so much mind that. Our dark metallics have a lot of pigment in them to bring them down that far, because you have to overpower the flake. It's why the dark metallics have such good coverage, comparatively speaking, but they're also a little more dull. We don't so much mind it because darker metallics are usually what people are using in shadows, and so you don't expect them to be super shiny, you know. Like, dark things by their very nature do not reflect light very, very well, so they absorb it. That's why they're dark. So that's a pretty nice bright brass, I think. So I think I'm going to run with this. So by mixing New Gold into it, we dropped some of the brown and black pigments that are in tarnished brass, and we dropped the ratio of those, right? Because we started adding a different color that doesn't have those colors. So brightened it, made it a bit more yellow, which, you know, brass, when it just starts to tarnish, it does go very yellow, dark yellow. Almost a little orangey. There we go. We'll wait and put another coat on that, but I am going to get his earrings before I forget. This is a job for Super Quindy. Wrestling with YouTube. Definitely a job for Super Quindy. Although I do want to go through mine and create a few playlists. Up until recently, my YouTube was really kind of a catch-all for just my streams, but I would like it to be a little more useful. So very gently, just kind of dab on some metallic onto these earrings to see if I can bring them up. They're going to be tiny, so it's going to be very hard to make them stand out, but we will try to do it with highlighting. It's for these tiny little things that metallics is the reason I don't prefer metallics on 28mm. I think they're going to be fine on these bigger metal areas, but when you're doing little small things like fine detail, filigree, things with a lot of tiny details, just little bits of stuff like these earrings, metallics are just not as optimal as NMM. They're not going to bring out those details the same way. Adios, Val. That said, we can certainly add highlights. to try to bring out those little metallics. We can attempt to override the fact that they tend to blend in and not be super bright. But do you see what I mean about the gold metallic? Like silver metallic would actually show up better in his ears because it would be lighter. The gold is not going to show up very well. This is where NMM has the advantage because you can really pop up the contrast and highlights with NMM and control the highlights in a way you can't with metallics. The metallics are going to highlight themselves according to the light sourcing. Hello, Dogfather. We lose a vowel, we gain a Dogfather. So I think that's a really nice rich brass, actually. I like this a lot. There's a good mix. So note to self, 2-to-1, tarnished brass and new gold. Makes a really nice starting point for brass. Then we're going to shade it. I am going to probably just work with the brass at first. And then we may or may not get to the silver, depending on how the brass goes. There. Boop. So far as I know, I am still on for streaming on Saturday. I think I have enough of my life handled that I'll be able to do that on my own channel, twitch.tv/paintingbig. Starting right around 3:30 USA Central. There, nice and shiny. Thank you for the shout out, Quindy. If you have not followed, hello, Kai Brightwing. Thank you for that cheer. Wow, that's a nice big fat cheer. Thanks. But yeah, for those of you who haven't followed my own channel, if you want to be notified when I stream on Saturday, if you want to come over and just hang out while we work on my other projects, my other things like Ms. Gnoll and the forest demon that we've been working on, kind of forest spirit bust. Those who want to see me work on big stuff in general, you will almost never see me working on little stuff. I don't think you'll probably ever see me working on little stuff on my own channel because I do enough of it here. So busts and 75mm and bigger, maybe someday bigger. All right. There we go. Nice, shiny. That's a good brass. I like that. Shiny, shiny. All right. Now let's figure out how we're going to shade it. So brass goes kind of orangish, can go kind of reddish, and then it goes verdigreed. I don't think I want verdigris on this. I'm pretty sure his weaponry is going to be beat up enough. And probably if he cleans anything on himself, it's going to be his weapons. So I'm going to say not verdigreed, but tarnished. So then I think I want like a reddish brown, like Ready Leather, or let me look around at some of my reddish browns. I have some new paints in here. That's good. It sucks when the water doesn't work. Gnoll is progressing, Pendrake, as you can see. Gnoll is getting dangerously close to done. Dangerously close. All right, so I want a reddish, ooh. Could use rusted anchor. I just whipped out the rusted anchor. That's a possibility. Or we could use mahogany brown. That's darker. Darker and redder and browner. So remember the first wash you put on is going to have the highest impact. So if I put a red down first, it is going to really warm up the brass. But if I put a brown down first, or a blackish brown down, it's going to cool it down. I can even use a green if I want to, like we did with the bronze, because it is brass. But I don't think I want to do that. I feel like I want to... Rusted anchor, I think, is a little bit too rust. I think I want to use mahogany. So I'm going to use Mahogany Brown as my first shading application on the brass. And then I'm going to follow it up with something that is, sorry, I got off kilter here. I'm crooked. No, must not be crooked. There we are. Then I want something like, maybe we'll use that Rogue Shadow. Another fast palette color, just to mix it up. I'm mixing up my colors a bit today. Can also use something that's totally against the grain, like Death Knight Black, the liner, which is a blue indigo type color. That could be interesting. Maybe we'll do a bunch of stuff. Maybe we'll see what we like. So I'm going to do 3, I think, which is a bit overkill for something this tiny, but let's experiment. I'm going to start with, what do I want to start with? I think I want to start with the red. The red, and then the indigo, and then the brown. So let's build some washes. I'm going to make just a small puddle of this because I have so little area to cover. I really don't need to waste paint. So again, Mahogany Brown 9070, which is a very, very red color, has a very high front load of red pigment. Death Knight Black, which is more a blue-purple liner. It's also a bit more transparent than some liners. It's a bit more translucent than blue liner, I think, because of the magenta. So it, I'm using 2 drops to make it stronger. And then Rogue Shadow, which is a very black-brown liner, as far as I can tell. I'm going to pop that in there. We'll get a better look at it in a moment. All right, so this is just throwing colors at metallics. It's fun. Do it. Play around. See what you can do. What's really good for this is if you have 40K orcs, because they have so much big chunky metal, and you just throw all sorts of different colored washes on it. It looks fantastic. The more chaotic, the better with orcs. So that's just an idea. If you have a friend with a bunch of orcs that doesn't want them anymore, if you want to experiment with metals, those models are really good for it. All right, so we're going to grab our happy little brush on sealer here. Boop. I'm going to do a little extra sealer than water, so a 4-2. And we'll see how these colors come out. Yeah, that's true. The new Nurgle, the new Nurgle models are fantastic. It's just the thing about it is the Nurgle models are a really complicated War Shadow. So, like, even though they're beautiful, I feel like as experimental models, I don't like them as much because they're just really pretty and I want to do a good job on them. So I'm less likely to experiment on them. Whereas the orcs are so simple. It's like, and the surfaces, the metal surfaces are just consistently large. So I think you can see the washes really well on them. Now, Nurgle also has a lot of that stuff. I don't know. I just feel like they're really pretty models and they're really intricate, which to me is inhibiting when it comes to using them as practice models. Hello, Bull. But yeah, you could also use reds with Nurgles too. Don't forget that rusty red undertone. You want to use, if you use complementary colors for layering on washes, you can get some really complicated, awesome effects. Yeah, he is pretty awesome, huh? For a simple Gnoll pirate, I think he's one of my favorite models I've done this year. All right, where's my mixing brush? There it is. So we're about to like put some wash treatments on his brass. And I'm using a red. Boop, there's our 3. The red there. It's actually mahogany brown, but it has a lot of red pigment in it. And then this is Death Knight Black, which is a blue-purple liner. And I've actually doubled the dose on this because I knew that it was kind of transparent. So, and then the last one is another liner, Rogue Shadow. All of these liners are from Fast Palettes. So what color is Rogue Shadow? Rogue Shadow is indeed a more blackened brown. It's a little bit colder. It's colder than brown liner. It's got some red in it. For sure. It might even be a black-red combo. but it's enough. It's got a bit of brown in it, I think. Maybe. Sometimes when you mix a certain reds with black, they will go brown. So this could be actually more like a red. I think they're pretty. Dogfather, when I did Orc Armor, I liked to open with like a rusty red, go with a dark olivey green, and then go with a brown. A black and brown, like a brown liner. I liked layering those opposing colors over steel to really, and starting with the rust color meant that I could layer it up in the cracks and get that rusted look. But then layering it over with the olive green and the black brown like helped to deepen the color and just make it dirty and, you know, orky. That's what I did on mine. I did 3 different levels of wash. All right, so let's apply this red and see what it looks like. Oh yeah, okay. So I'm just gonna dab it on. When I'm doing very large models like Mr. Grumpy's breastplate, I might stipple with the wash and go for patterns right off the bat. But with 28mm, there's not a lot of room for that. You mostly are trying to get your metal kind of dulled down and introduce some interesting colors into it so that you can bring it back up with a much more complex look. That's a good thing to do. See, you guys are full of ideas for my Patreon today. Layering colored washes. I can do that. Boop, let me put that on the list. I already got another good request for today. Thank you, Bull. Yeah, never be afraid, especially if you're a patron and you're looking for a topic. Never be afraid to suggest something. So layering, because I am always looking for new content. And since I have been talking a lot about this stuff lately, the layering colored washes stuff since we've been actually painting metallics, makes sense to do a little bit of a focus topic on it. So thank you. Patreon. Yes. Patron. Yes, you are a patron. Yep. So yeah, I'll put that on my list. That's a good topic for like a $2. Once I'm done with these textures videos, I think I maybe have one more texture thing to do. All right, so I want to wait for this wash to dry before I apply my next wash. So wherever I will have let it pool, it's going to take a little bit longer. So I'm going to actually take this red up and put it on his ears, his little earrings. It's when you've got tiny little areas like this that you're doing in metallic, you probably don't want to do as many washes on them. It's hard enough to make them stand out, so darkening them down may not be the answer, but I was thinking maybe if I made them a little more red, it would help them to stand out once I put the highlights on, because they're up against a green area. So if I can make them a little redder, it might actually help them in the future. And I'm just using actually my really good brush for the wash this time, just to make sure that I can hit these little areas here. Otherwise I was using my mixing brush to apply wash. Hey, Ron reserves the right to rename things in weird ways. That's a Ron thing. I take no responsibility for it. All right, so let's put on this blue-purple one. I'm interested. This is going to cool it down. It's going to cool down our brass. And I may keep it focused on lower areas or stuff like that, because it is going to dull it down. And what I can do is if I get it up on a top area and I don't want it, I can just rinse out my brush and pull it off of that top area. Just kind of polish this up. Because that definitely cooled. See how cold that took it? Like that definitely brought it down, because we're going over like a reddish yellow with like a blue purple. It's just like odd. And because it's so against the grain, it's almost, because this is almost a reddish orange, the blue is almost complementary. And so it really makes it dirty looking. So if you're looking for a dirty, cold brass, I would say that going over stuff with the Death Knight black is not a bad idea. I am going to keep this to the lower part though. Lower shadows of this area. And you can do that. You could totally paint with a wash like you're layering, especially over metallics. And then just build it up and let it pool in some areas that you feel you want it stronger in. All right. I'm calling him Gnoll Pirate. I don't care what his previous incarnations were. Can't people reinvent themselves over time? Seriously, Coos, give the Gnoll a break. He spent some time doing other careers, and then, you know, when COVID hit, he had a career change, like so many of us. And now he's a pirate. And he's perfectly happy as a pirate, he tells me. So, you know. All right, now I'm going to put this brown over the top and see if it's too much. It's going to bring it way down. This is Rogue Shadow. It's a very cold brown, dark, cold brown. It's going to really, really beat up this brass. I still do have traces of the red in the brass. See the red? You can see a little bit of it. But it's definitely, I'm darkening it down. I'm beating it up a little bit. Because he's a pirate. And here I am taking steps to keep a little bit of my red. And not put washes over it. And I'm going to keep, I'm not going to put these additional washes up here, those tiny little earrings. I stand by my comment about career change. I think he's just like changed his career over the years. He was sick of like being a taskmaster in a cubicle farm, and he just decided he needed to change. Pirate pays a lot better, you know. Higher risk, higher reward. I don't think he was cut out for his desk job. There we go. Excellent. So now we've really, you remember how bright it was when we started. Now it's really kind of come down and gotten a lot more complex. And I dropped my brush because it's what I do. Let me get my brush. Excellent. All right. So now we go back with our original color. I'm going to thin it a little bit and essentially blend it in. Now, when you're putting on metallics, if you have to blend, be aware that you're going to have to blend with the shadows. You're going to have to blend using your glazes and washes. With the exception of the bones, some of the bones metallics. Metallics they don't really layer because you're essentially painting with rocks. You're painting with really finely ground rocks, and they don't layer like paint does because their particle size is much larger than pigment particles. So I can thin it down, but I'm never going to make it blend from the shadows to highlight smoothly, which is why you have to bring your shadow back in if you want that blend. But I don't mind because here I'm going to actually stipple with my metallic. I'm using my original metallic, but I'm not going to cover up what I've done with my shading because I really like the color I got. Instead, I'm going to concentrate on bringing out like edges. Because edges are where would happen. So any tarnish would be rubbing off against like his fur. And I'm going to bring up any area where I feel like there would be highlight, like the upper part here. And using a stippling brush stroke allows you to kind of suggest almost a hammered appearance to the metal, which I like. At this point, we can also get a little bit more selective with our shadings. So like if I grab some of this rogue shadow, I can make more of a hard line here where the angle changes on his cuff to bring out more of that shape, that detailing. And again, more stippling on the back and on the edge. I feel like I lost a little bit my shadow through here. There we go. So you can see how it goes into the shadow. There is still a little bit of shininess down here, and I am going to bring up the edge a little because you'll have light reflecting, but most of the light's up on top. So what I may do a little bit is I may grab my metallic, mix it with a little bit of my red wash and a little bit of my rogue shadow, and use that darker color to stipple some highlights on the underside. The thing about metallics is that they do reflect light underneath. And so it never hurts to put like a highlight. You want highlights in your shadows, you just don't want them to be very bright. But you still want to be able to see details. Unless you're doing comic book style, then shadows go to black. It's part of the style. That's a nice rich color, isn't it? Metallics for everything. Yeah, what you see here, War Shadow, is just the base coat. I always put a base coat of regular color down so that the metallics will look shinier. Putting a dark base coat down is one way to get metallics to look shinier and cover well with a single coat. So yeah, we'll be doing steel and we'll be doing some weathering, probably a little bit of rust, maybe some pitting and stuff like that on it. So I've got my brass and I'm going to do a stippling pattern. So using the tip of my brush to create an irregular pattern. This is a very rough weapon he's using. It's very battered. The guard is really deformed. It's obviously seen a lot of intense use. It is not an elegant, it's not an elegant weapon. So the stippling works with that because it suggests a rougher texture on the metal. Fur was the next 28mm texture I was going to do on my video, and I was going to use this guy as kind of an example too. Although I'll do a different model on the video too. I need to figure out which one I want to use. Okay, weathering. The word you want is weathering, Shadow Raven. So, when you're asking about that sort of thing, that's a weathering effect rather than TMM. Although, as with these washes, which are bringing out some irregularities, you know, washes can also be weathering. Technically, it is weathering to like be taking down this brass and dirtying it up. So, but this is also just how I do TMM to force the shadows I want and to add some complexity to the color and depth. Metallics can otherwise seem very flat and just bright and shiny like they did before we started doing all this. But yeah, I was going to do a little bit of weathering, not anything out of control. But I'm going to get it set up first to be just steel. So, I mean, you can leave it there or you can keep going. Weathering is always the last thing I do. Yes, I didn't hear the Luca news either. So what was it? The announcement. So if anybody else watched Luca's stream and heard his announcement, Quindy can save us it, but I was hoping one of the others of you would know. Oh, good. Yeah, he was interested in that. Actually, a lot of painters have been kind of keen to work with Reaper on that. I know Sergio asked me about it too. And I told him to talk to Ed. But Sergio already was kind of maybe working with a company in Europe. Oh, good, War Shadow. Yeah, that's a good fast palette use. So that's really good. Yeah, I mean, I've always thought Ed always was talking about doing this, so I'm glad it's finally happening. Like, he had talked about maybe getting some of our painters who regularly teach at ReaperCon to pick, like, their favorite selection of colors and do it that way. So this is the start of that. That's great. All right, so now we've got our original brass color. I got to bring it a little bit back up on this back here. You know, if you feel that like some nicks and scratches and dings fit the character, like this one, Julie, doing a couple of big ones, I think is never a problem because, you know, inexperienced painters will be happy and they'll just do a wash on it. And it gives us somewhere to start. As long as it fits the character, I think additional texture on blades is great. I mean, sure, it limits, like, what I can do as far as it's already there, so I have to paint it, but that's seldom a problem. So I would say, yeah, if it fits the character and their weapons should be beat up, do it. It just gives painters a bit of a start point at that point, I think. All right, so I'm gonna put an additional highlight, maybe even 2, on this. So actually, maybe, thinking about it, I think I'm gonna do a mixture of our original brass color with another drop of new gold and with a drop of pearl white, because brass can get a little cold when it comes up, and using that pearl white could help. Although, you know, oh, globby. There we go. Ah, way too much gold there. Well, maybe we'll do the gold first and then we'll do the white. I was going to say for the earrings, I may want to just go with the bright gold. There are limits to improving wet palettes, Max. When you come down to it, it's a very personal choice, like on what kind of paper you like. I would like to see a truly watertight travel one. That's something I don't think has been done, not well, with a white sponge. Although actually, yeah, because my green one isn't truly waterproof. But I don't know how you do it. Like, there are still a couple things like that have not been done with wet palettes, but I think almost everything else has been. So yeah, it's I think the biggest thing these days that people want is a neutral colored sponge. Neutral or white. Yeah, I'm gonna add just a little white to this. This is pearl white. It's a white metallic. It is infinitely useful for highlighting other metallics. This is thinned about 5:1 again. But yeah, like, David has tried out a couple of different wet palettes as promos, like people who have asked him to assess and give them feedback. And it at some point with a product that's as simple as a wet palette, you end up just splitting hairs. And some of the improvements, so we're going to use that yellow metallic to highlight these earrings and some other stuff. At some point you end up just like, because some people are never going to use your paper because they want parchment paper and that's it. So then you have to ask yourself, do I just pre-cut parchment to fit my wet palette? Or do I let them do it themselves, you know? So you've got 3 things you can really affect with the wet palette: the container, the sponge, and the paper. And the paper, you could try to do something really new with it, but it better be an improvement or people are just going to throw it in their closet and just use like parchment. And then a lot of people try to change the sponge, either type or color or both. And then the case, people try to make it a different shape, different size, have attachments you can put on it, like traditional well palette wells, stuff like that. Gonna edit another secondary highlight right down here where it meets the blade, I think. So yeah, to really make something different for the market, you have to ask a lot of questions and really know what your target audience is. Crows and Bones at cons, I will often have water in my wet palette, and I will just want to, at the end of a class, I just want to close that up and get it out of there. And it would be very nice if it was water, if it would like actually hold the water. Like, if I was just long enough for me to get it to a sink or throw it in my bag, get it out of there. When you travel to cons and you're teaching and you're moving around a lot with your setup, I feel like I would actually use a wet palette that I could just, you know, not worry about if it leaked. I don't ever have like a ton of water in my wet palette, but even a little leaking, if I throw it in a bag, is really a pain. So for me, that would be a big plus. Because it makes no sense to me to have all these wet palettes that close tightly, but still don't keep water in them. Like, why do I need one that closes tightly if it's not going to actually hold the water in it? If I still have to put it in a Ziploc bag. This is, Ron, this is. Hey, New Ink Code, thank you for the resub. 25 months, dang. Right, exactly, Max Style. That's my point, is sometimes a market is really saturated. And so you may just do a decent, yeah, this is the model. You may just do a decent, solid take on something that's already out there just to get it into distribution. Like, that's the other advantage Reaper has, right? Is that we can make things available to a wide audience because we have really wide reach in our distribution markets. So sometimes it makes sense for Reaper to do a product if they can then offer it to a market that may not have a lot of other options in that. Yes, Reaper prefers to buy the bandwagon. That's something I always saw eye to eye with Ed on. Is that it was always my personal philosophy that if we couldn't do it better or cheaper or with better distribution or hopefully with all three, then it wasn't worth putting resources into it, and we should try to do something unusual instead. We should try to look at things that everybody else was not trying to do. This is actually why I didn't, I never found a good option for color shift. There were already companies doing it that were in stores that were doing it well, and I could not find a product that would do it better. So if I can't do it better or different or offer you something outside of what others are offering, it makes more sense for me, in my opinion, to spend my effort developing something that's different, that maybe the market doesn't know it wants yet. So there we go. So now with this higher highlight, you can see the edges are coming out. Details are coming out kind of like with a real paint. Just like with a regular opaque paint, the more highlights and shadows and contrasts you have on metallics, the more details will show up. It's just not quite as effective in controlling the eye because you still will always have that shine coming from and dictated by your light source, like your natural light source in the room. So I can highlight these earrings to make them stand out a little better. But yeah, Reaper has turned into kind of a pioneer. I mean, with the Bones and now with this Bones USA and you know, our paint line really goes, it's a different kind of line. It works differently than other paint lines. You know, we do things a little different. The airbrush that, you know, the Vex is definitely has a different like thing to it, right? With the way that you can swap the needle. So I think that I feel like that's the way you want to go for success. Like, you can't always chase the trend. By the time you get there, the trend is gone and there's a new trend. Unless you're very fast at the pivot. And a lot of these small companies are fast at the pivot, and so they're good at that. And Ed, I think, also is good at going for products that kind of uphold like Reaper's whole philosophy and just the way we do things and the kind of company that Ed wants to run, right? The vision for the company. There we are. So see how that highlight makes things just come up? And the fact that we're continuing to stipple gives us kind of a rough highlight texture. You can kind of see the texture there because of the stipples, especially because we're stippling with the pure metallic. And when you do that, you definitely do build up more of a texture with the way the light hits it. So you can, even though it's metallic, it's still like giving information to the eye with your brush stroke changing. Color shift does well on very large projects, very specific topics. It can be fun. There are ways to deal with it. You can use it for glazing that can give you some really interesting effects. There we go. Now a little bit of this highlight down here. And just like with paint, the more highlights you put on, the smaller you should make them and the tighter you should make them. And just as with other colors on 28mm, you don't have to put on very many highlights to get a nice effect. So I put on 3 layers of shadow. Then I got my base color as a highlight, and then I put on another layer of highlight. Do you see how rich and complex that color looks now? The brass is definitely not just brass paint like chucked on the model. You can see the shadows in it. You can see different colors in it. It's got a nice depth to it. I'm going to do a little bit of an under highlight here. I don't want to get too bright down underneath though, so I'm going to glaze that again. Just want a little bit of highlight, not a lot. There. Better. Perfect. I actually did that already, Dogfather. I have a color shift tutorial on the Patreon. Used a dark sword model for it. I think the color shift one is in the $10 tier, but I don't remember. Okay, so this is great, and we're a few minutes past 11, and that's fantastic too. I think I'm gonna do one more quick highlight with a lot of pearl white and just a little bit of the yellow, just to bring up a little bit higher. Should be able to search term. Shouldn't have to dig far in my Patreon. You should be able to type in a search term and it should bring it up because I have keywords on every post. Oh, we're crooked. We're crooked again. There we are, much better. All right, I'm going to get a couple drops of pearl white here. Pearl white is such a useful metallic. If you do not have it, you should get it. It is the way, just like with pure white paint, it is the way to build highlights for any metallic. Even gold. Now, pearl white does have white pigment in it, so I do need to thin this a little bit more, just like with any white. Just a little, if I don't want it to be truly popping. And I don't. I just want little touches of it. Just a tiny touch here and there. And I want very little of it, because if I cover up too much of my surface with the pearl, it'll change the color of the surface. But I can bring out those earrings just a little bit more. I'm going to get just the top edge of this. I'm going to continue using a stippling stroke. See how that edge just pops out there? So I don't want to do too much of this. This may be a little bit much. I'm going to grab my previous highlight color. Just kind of stipple in the edge there. So be very careful with your white highlight on gold metallic. Make sure you don't overdo it. No, you want to use a shine. You want to use a shiny color always. Highlight your metallics with a shiny white, max. Because the problem is, although pure white may look light to your eyes, it's actually going to look less. It's going to look less light than a metallic because it's dull. It's not shiny. There's no reason not to use pearl white. Like, I don't know why you would ever use pure white instead of pearl white. Like, why not use the actual white metallic? Like, this is what it's for. And if you mix pure white into your paint, the problem is it's got so much pigment that it's going to kill the shine. I mean, if you must, if you've got nothing else. But this is the thing. When you're doing metallics, do metallics. It makes sense to use opaque paints in metallic shading because when you've got a shadow on a metallic, the light isn't there anyway. That's why it's a shadow. So it makes sense that you don't want that place to be shiny. But when you have a highlight, that's the epitome of shiny. That is what shiny is on metal. So, like, it's the light reflecting, right? This is kind of back to don't cross the streams. But, I mean, it's a good question. And if you don't have pearl white, you could mix a little bit of pure white in. But like I said, it's, I don't like how that's working. But it can be dangerous because it will drop your, level of shine by quite a bit. It'll, because white is so opaque, it's a very opaque pigment. And remember that part of what makes metallics shiny is their transparency. You need the light to be able to hit and reflect. So when you use something that gets in the way of that, be it an opaque pigment, which gets between the flake and the surface of the paint, or a paint with a dull finish, that finish is going to spread through your base and it's going to change the finish. Like, whenever you do that, you're going to change your effect. Got a little too light there, so I'm going to actually put my base coat down on it. But yeah, this would be one of those times when I would say, when you've got a question like this, stop and think about what you're actually doing. You're adding a flat paint to the area that should be the shiniest. And work forward. Like, this is the kind of thinking, this is why these conceptual techniques are so hard to get, right? Like, I had to do a very, very difficult NMM PDF the other day where I had to stop and ask myself at every single stage, what am I doing here? What is the effect I'm trying for and how can I convey it? It is, it's difficult. Like, it's hard. There are still topics out there that are hard for me. So I know how, like, it's just like, well, why not just use a little pop of pure white? And honestly, it's a spec. You're right. You probably could do it. But if I did that, actually the way around that, Max, would be if you only have pure white and you do not have pearl white and you want to highlight your metallics up to white, you could mix your pure white with a little bit of your metallic. But then after that, you've got to go over that with a gloss sealer. Like, you've got to bring some shine back so that it looks right. So there is a way to do it. But for me, it's like, just get pearl white. It's so much easier than having to go through those steps. That and I don't want pearl white to get canceled. Pearl white is so useful, and I'm going to sing its praises up and down. Like, because if pearl white goes, like, my metallics are screwed. I'm going to have to find somebody else who does a white metallic and start using their paint if pearl white got canceled. So, because it really is that useful, guys. I use it in every single metallic I do. Just a little bit there on the inside to really pop it. See that? You can see the white, you can see the yellow get washed out a little bit, but it definitely focuses your attention. I think that looks great. What do you guys think? Is our brass looking good? It looks kind of dull back here. I think I'm going to add a little bit more highlight back here. Right, exactly, Grey Mouser. People don't understand how useful it is to have a white metallic. Just didn't go quite as far down on this side. Didn't lighten up my brass quite enough on that. Yeah, white metallics, not necessarily useful in themselves, but useful as highlighters for every other metallic. That was definitely something where I hadn't seen it in the industry, but I wanted it because of its usefulness, and so I made it. There we go, much better. And then this side, just a little bit more. Yeah, I know. I'm going over on purpose because I cut it off a little early yesterday and we started late, so I'm just making up my hours. So that's why I decided I would do one more highlight here. I figured that would take the time, and it has. So we're pretty good. There we are. And we needed to re-highlight this anyway. So how does that, do you guys think this is a cool effect? And hopefully you can use it. Just a little bit there. You see how you can actually see the details on the sword, and it's pretty sharp. It looks good with the rest of the piece. I'm very happy with this. Right, exactly. That's the thing, right, Quindy? Because we don't have a Luca breathing down our necks today, so... So now next time we're going to tackle the steel. And I'll probably give him some orange or yellow eyes. And we may deal with... We haven't highlighted the black stripes on the pants. He's almost done. We need to finish this pouch. I need to get his heels. His heels don't have highlights. But yeah, he's looking great. I mean, this is pretty snaz. I love the colors. I love the pants. Like, I wasn't sure on how the colors were going together, but that red sash just nails it. And then it's just like, it brought it all together. It's funny how you can throw one accent color onto a piece and have everything suddenly work. Like, that's the really cool part of using the color wheel thing that we did. But I think he's turning out, yeah, definitely to be one of my favorite minis of the year. So, and I love Gnolls, so this is not a hard sell, right, for me, because I do love Gnolls. But yeah, I think so. I don't know. I've liked a lot of the models we've done this year. Actually, I really liked how Wyvern turned out. I really liked how our Crimson Herald turned out. Like, there were a lot, and then the models that I turned in Iran, there were a couple in there that I really liked too. So. But yeah, I really like how he's got so much personality, and although he's simple, there's so much he can do. There's so much, I mean, we textured this guy like crazy. We did cloth texture, fur texture, leather texture, we're doing metal texture, we're doing all of that. So, yeah, and I want his eyes to be a little darker. Like, right now they're really pale. It's hard to make them read as yellow because they're so tiny. Like, if I could wish for one thing, it would be just slightly larger eyes on this figure. Yeah, I put the Wyvern up on my Instagram last week. I have to come up with maybe I'll Gnoll. Maybe I'll put this guy up this week for Instagram, or maybe I'll wait until his metal's done. I've been putting one Insta up a week. It's my one Insta a week campaign. But yeah, so I really like him. I think he's turned out fantastic. Thanks for the ride, guys. Thanks for being along on it. Do we have anybody, any show this afternoon, Quindy? Yes, The Crafty Creative with Josh. Do tune in, everyone. Thank you so much for coming along. I hope you love the Gnoll like I love the Gnoll. And tomorrow is Ogre Day. Ogre Friday. You guys have and say hi to Mike Disney as well. Have a great day, guys. I'll see you tomorrow.